When it comes to our work, we have certain habits. Maybe we have certain ideas or concepts that we constantly apply. We probably worked quite well in the recent past, so we know how to do our job. And that's where the challenge or the problem might begin. When we talk about how to change yourself and how future-proof your job is, many people have a very low level, unfortunately, of self-reflection. And then they are very surprised about suddenly hearing that their job either might be non-existent or might be changed to say the least. We're talking about self-disruption. Self-disruption is a concept that is unfortunately rarely applied with many. And I strongly recommend to anyone listening to this podcast to follow the advice, because when you look at your job right now and you think you just keep going for the next 20, 30 years, I can tell you this is not going to happen. No job is going to last without any significant change. And when you do not proactively start the change, someone else is going to do it for you, and maybe, in worst case, without you. So we're talking about a proactive, quite radical way of not self-improvement, but a self-disruptive change. And of course, we all know that there are certain issues with what we're doing here. And we all know that we have habits and we like our habits. Rarely we question the jobs we do because we do these jobs properly. People confirm that. So we have a high level of self-insurance and also, let's face it, a bit of ego where we say, I know how to do the job. Who do you think you know it better than I do? The problem is that there is always a high level of change resistance included as soon as you think you know it better than anyone else. That means problems, situations, issues are either overlooked, not seen, or simply deliberately ignored. And then there is a huge surprise as soon as someone shows up and say, well, we had an external look at what you're doing right here, and we're going to do it differently. And maybe either with you as a limited resource or completely without you in the future. So let's look at self-disruption and how to do it better. And of course, some people might now say, oh, come on, Neil, self-disruption, another new trend from some management magazine. Is it another relabeled change process? No, it's absolutely not. When someone says that self-disruption is simply the new trendy topic, the only thing that this person really says is, I have no clue about what happened in the past. If we look into science, the concept of self-disruption was properly mentioned. It was mentioned for decades and decades, but properly mentioned since 1988. It was mentioned in the Cognitive Therapy and Research magazine. It's publicly available with the article published by Miller and Tesser, Miller with AR at the end, Tesser, Tesser, so you can read the article. It is a proper psychological foundation, a scientific foundation with this. However, we have to see how does this work in a real world practice where some people might have limited or no access to scientific resources, or maybe someone says, I read through the article and it's all a bit too meta level. Could you give me some advice just how to do it in my job? And that is exactly what we're going to talk about today. So if you want to engage with the approach of self-disruption, then you need to know that a couple of questions have to be the foundation of what you do. So sit down and then analyze your job with, in the beginning, 5 questions to ask. Question number 1, what is it that you do exactly? Define your job. And when you, for example, say, oh, I do general admin, I can tell you that is not what you really do. You have to go into deeper detail. What is it that you exactly do? Because question number 2 is based on the quality of theory and the quality of documentation you put down in question number 1. So when you document, what do you really do? Number 2, you have to answer the question of purpose. What is the purpose that you do? And be honest to yourself about where you are. When you are sitting somewhere and say, I am producing these reports and I'm doing a lot of memos, and all these memos and reports are sent somewhere, and I don't know what happens with these reports and memos, and then you just tell yourself, I don't need to know, that's not my job. Be sure if you produce memos and reports, some AI or some automated software is going to replace you sooner or later. What is the purpose of what your job? What is the value add? What is the value you add to the organization? That is the core question. Going to question number three, what are the procedures, the processes, or probably the habits that you follow each and every day, each and every week, each and every month, each and every quarter, each and every year? So define what is your job when you go into detail with all the different steps of what it is. So you see, it is quite some work to do. It's nothing you do within 3 minutes. Question number 4 then is, when for the last time did you get real and proper unfiltered feedback? And I'm not talking about people who unsolicitedly approach you and tell you, oh, do you want to have some feedback? Because these are often only people who want to be taken way more important than they are. Unsolicited feedback has a place, and the place is the bin. That's where unsolicited feedback belongs. Also, to all the leaders listening to this podcast, when you say I have feedback and the only thing you want to do is criticize people, that's not feedback. One of the golden rules of feedback is someone can say, I don't want to have feedback right now, even to you as a leader. So if you say I have criticism, please call it criticism. If you only want to criticize people, don't cover it up, don't sugarcoat it with telling people it's feedback, because it's not. You make yourself really look not very credible as a leader when you always come around the corner and say, oh, there's some feedback, and it's nothing else than criticism. You really need a 101 on feedback then. So when was the last time that you got true, honest, unfiltered feedback, and what was it? Take a look at that. And then the 5th question is, when for the last time did you really progress in what you do? When for the last time did you have a proper development, getting your job to a better quality, better outcome, better process, something better? When for the last time did you properly develop? And I do not mean, I want to be dead straightforward with that and very clear. Development does not mean motivational, inspirational, blah, blah, or manifestations or anything which cannot be either measured or proven by science. It is not development when you say, oh, I sat at home and I had a self-reflection moment and I had a pep talk and I manifested to deliver greater quality. That is a pile of nonsense. That has nothing to do with anything an organization is going to pay you for in the future. It doesn't make your job better. It doesn't make you better. It doesn't make your job safer. It is the route into a catastrophe because you think you developed, but you didn't. So look into scientifically proven concepts. I know they are not as sexy and easy to learn as some motivational, inspirational one-liner or a meme on the internet or a pseudo-smart one-liner that some motivational speaker gave you. However, no one is going to pay you to do this unscientific stuff in the future. You need something to develop on, and that must have a proper foundation. When you have these 5 questions answered, you sit down and you do a plus-minus list. And this plus-minus list means you put your different tasks into how many of your actions are proactive and how many of your actions are reactive. So when are you in the lead? When are other people in the lead? The more reactive you are, the more likely it is that they will sooner or later take a look at you and say, are you the best option to hire? Are you the most viable option to hire? Including, are you the most economically viable option to hire? Or should just look at someone else, maybe do with an external person or with a different person, someone else. So look at where have you been proactively, where have you been proactive and where have you been reactive? When you've completed that, so you see there's quite some work to do, you then have to sit down and then you have to compare with all the plus and minuses, questions answered, proactive and reactive list. Compare it with your life goals and the organizational goals. And when you see there is very little alignment, or you simply sit there and you do not even know the organizational goals. And by the way, when the organizational goals are just keep going, or we'll grow in the future, or growth mindset, blah, blah, that is not an organizational goal. So when you don't know the organizational goals, please approach your leaders and ask for them. Is there an alignment between your life goals and the organizational goals with everything you've written down so far? Because if not, you might have to do a tough decision. However, don't make a quick decision here, sleep over it a couple of nights, and then make a reasonable decision. Because after you looked at the life goals and the organizational goals and the alignment in between of the two, then you make a list and you put down which changes do you want to do. That's question number 1 here. Number 2, how do you want to make these changes happen? And number 3, which is the most challenging often, until when do you want to have them completed? By which date? And just be ambitious, but also realistic. I often see lists where people say, I want to change these 4, 5, 6, 7 things in the next 14 or 30 days. That is not possible because you are doing this besides the daily business still running. So you always have to take into consideration when the daily business is running, what can you put in there, which is ambitious, but also realistic to be changed besides the main business, keeps you busy and keeps you running. So which changes, how to do them, and by which date do you want to have them complete? Be ambitious. but be realistic. And then there's one additional concept which I want to strongly recommend to you, and that is the concept of a certain change approach. There are three options I can offer you here. So number one is the change buddy. The change buddy is someone who normally works in the same department, same organization, someone from the same department helping you, probably someone you already know. By the way, choose someone who can be critical to you. If it's someone you don't feel comfortable with, or you know someone who's not going to be honest with you, or they have too many filters because they think they're in a relation with you and they don't want to harm it, so they're not going to be honest with you with feedback, maybe change buddy is not the right system for you. Look into the department, same organization. Is there someone suitable for the change buddy system? If not, there's another approach. Option number two is the change partner system. Change partner system means it is someone who normally comes from a different department, can be someone from the same company or from someone from a different company, but in the same organizational group. Some companies are set up in a way that they have multiple companies working together. So someone who has a bit more of an external view on what you do. Often, by the way, changes are done here in a tandem setting, that people simply say, I help you to get your change done, you help me to get my change done. You simply keep each other accountable. The third option you have is change mentoring. And that means an external person is going to help you. Very important here. It does not mean the mentor does it for you. Some people mix that up. The change mentor is going to accompany you, help you, advise you, give you insights, probably helps you in certain situations, but still the work has to be done by you, because otherwise it is not a proper change. Otherwise, you simply hired someone to do the change for you and you did not change in the slightest. So three options here: change buddy, change partner, change mentor. And of course, when you chose one here, you have to look at what do you want to achieve and be ambitious, but also be realistic. Because if you now decide, well, there's nothing to change and I came to the conclusion everything I do is absolutely perfect, I can tell you that there's a very high likelihood that your organization will not work with you until you retire, if you plan to retire. And of course, there's more on this topic. There are always a couple of questions arising where people are either quite unsure or not sure how to put it into practice, and I always want to address that. So first, I have to say thank you again. This leadership podcast, again, was in the top ranks. I posted that on LinkedIn and Instagram on the weekend. During the weekend, we again were in the top ranks in 6 different countries. It is simply amazing. Thank you very much for always listening to this podcast. I'm very happy that without paid advertising, only based on content, this is possible. So there are 3 main steps I always recommend you to do in the end. So step number 1, if you have anything where you say, I'd like to chat with you, I have open aspects, things I don't understand, or simply questions, just send me an email, nb@nb-networks.com, and then we take it from there. If you have something very specific, because maybe you work in HR, leadership, executive, and you say, hey, we need someone for training or speaking or coaching, consulting, mentoring, or we need someone for project interim management, or we have an event, can you speak there or host it? Yes, I can, but we can also just chat about your question. Doesn't cost you a single penny. Feel free to text me, nb@nb-networks.com. Step number 2, I strongly recommend to register for the leadership letter, expert.nb-networks.com. It's 100% content at free guarantee. Every Wednesday morning, you receive an email, and everything I publish is available at no charge, but only via this means. If you find my content somewhere else, you might find it, and there might be a paywall. And yes, then you have to pay. If you go to expert.nb-networks.com, you will see all areas at no charge. Feel free to sign up. As I said, it's 100% content at free guarantee. And the third step is the most important one. And that means to apply what you heard in this podcast. Because only when you apply what you heard, you will see the positive change in the organization, in your department, or with you that you want to see happening, because that is the reason why you listen to this podcast. I wish you all the best implementing these steps in your organization, your department, or with you. Always happy to help you. Just let me know and drop me an email and we take it from there. And at the end of this podcast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Thank you very much for your time.